everybody. How you doing? I'm Melissa Pinkham, and I'm here all set up to move around on the stage because I'm a mover and I'm a think when I think. So I'm going to really try to move, and then I'm going to try to get back to the podium, and I'm going to do all that, okay? So today, this is the workshop is on toddlers as investigators in nature and building an emergent curriculum with toddlers in an urban forest school. And I work in Los Angeles, and I work at a school called Northeast Los Angeles Forest School. But before I'm going to begin, I have to tell you, just a couple mornings ago, and this is just a coincidence, I opened up one of my emails, and the email was somebody selling an inquiry-based curriculum for a whole year. And I thought, how can you sell that? It wasn't about teaching somebody how to do curriculum. It was about what to provide for the children in terms of themes. And I thought to myself, how do they know what the children are interested in, right? And here they go again, capitalizing on children and taking over for them and deciding what children should be thinking about. So, you know, I was frustrated and I was heated up, and I said, Melissa, calm, because you're gonna come here and you're gonna talk, and we could work together. Instead of spending, you know, $3,500 on a curriculum, let's come to these conferences, let's talk to one another, let's keep talking, and let's learn how to build curriculum together, right? Does that sound good? Okay, let's do it. Okay, so before I begin telling you a little bit about my own journey, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and we can circle back to this, okay? So what type of play are you seeing in your programs? Like, I'll tell you, we have kids in my program that are throwing rocks and pine cones. Any other type of play with your toddlers? Wood chips, yeah. Digging, scooping, pouring. What's that? Oh. Climbing, yeah. Putting things in their mouth, that's a good one. Transporting, yeah, yeah. So these are great. Everyone remember these, because I'll forget these in just a few minutes, okay? But these are so good. And now the next question is, what ideas are you interested in? What do you like to do? What are things that you're passionate about? Like, okay, I'll always start. I like to do music with children, like folk music. I like to cook with children. Yoga, anybody do yoga? Okay, kids need yoga, right? I mean, I love taking children yoga classes because they're not intimidating, you know? Kids yoga is the best. Okay, so yoga, gardening, maybe things. And what are things happening in your natural environment? Like, what's that? Yeah, children, yeah, running around, yeah. Especially when they're toddlers and there's no boundaries, right? You know? We had a great rain, right? We're both from Los Angeles. We had 2 years of rain. That's big time in Los Angeles. So that became part of our curriculum. We had a lot of coyotes daily in our curriculum. Weather is a big one, but what else is happening in your environments? Bugs. What's that? Bugs. Spiders. What's that? Birds, yeah. What did you say? I'm sorry. Gardening, yeah. Fungi, toddlers really love fungi. That's a good one. Okay, so we're going to think about those in a minute, okay? We'll keep going back to those. So for today, I'm going to do this in 1 hour. We're going to talk about my reflections as an educator, and then we're going to demystify the misconceptions of emergent curriculum, because often, I don't know about you, with me, if something is new, I tend to put a strong arm out and go, I don't know if I like that. I'm trying not to do that so much. We'll do that fast. Why practice emergent curriculum and the challenges of emergent curriculum, and then stories from my classroom, and hopefully we'll get to observation and planning. But if we don't, we can continue talking, right? Sound okay? Okay, so this is my personal reflection. This is my 39th year teaching. But I've only been in forest school for 5 years. So I was introduced to it in 2019. I didn't even know forest schools were in the United States, let alone Los Angeles. And so this was very new to me. And I came in with some questions. I thought, okay, first of all, how is the play going to change when we're outside in nature, especially with toddlers, because I came in as a toddler specialist, right? And then I thought, how is it going to affect their emotional development? Are they still going to have separation? Are they still going to have tantrums? Are they still going to feel a lot of different things? And then the third one was, how can I keep things continually connected to nature, right? There was a fourth one too. I'm used to being in an outside program with materials, right? With the Tonka trucks and the shovels and the buckets, what can I say? I always like that kind of stuff. How am I going to bring that into the forest? So I went for my first day where I sat around and I was what's called like the trial day, right? And they're checking me out, I'm checking them out if I like it and if they like me. And there was this little 2.5-year-old and he comes up to me with 3 live oak leaves. And he sits next to me and he goes, Melissa, he goes, these are my 3 cars. This is my fast car, this is my red car, and this is my blue car. So I thought, wow, he took nature, a 2-year-old, and transformed it to something else. When many people say that toddlers aren't capable of doing that. So I thought, this is fantastic. It sort of answered my first question about how are they going to use the materials, or do I need to bring in materials? No, not really, because they can do transformation at a very young age. So I came in with these different questions, and they still become my study questions because I'm a researcher. At the same time, I was writing a book called Emergent Curriculum with Toddlers because I'd been with toddlers for a while, and I'm thinking, these guys have great inquiry, and I really want to study this. So I went out to go find a book or like anything on, Emergent Curriculum with Toddlers, and there was nothing out there. And this was in 2016, 17. So I started writing about it because I was with toddlers for a long time. I did like this 8-year toddler program when I was with them for 8 hours a day. So I had a lot of time observing them and listening to them. So I want to say to you, you're in sort of this groundbreaking time. Your stories are more important than other stuff getting out there because you're with the children. And if I hadn't sat with the children and saw them and create these wonderful ideas, right, with the earth, with their materials, with their thinking, I would have never written a book. So write a book, right? Your notes are important. Your documentation is important, okay? So the school that I work at, we meet in 2 parks. We meet in a park called Griffith Park, half-time, and the other park is Elysian Park. And we every 6 months, we let the land regenerate, and then we come back. And I'm going to give you a visual of our base camp. We set up different, blankets of invitations, but nature is the primary teacher, right? So and these are 2-year-olds. So I have a library, and I have a little area for them to do construction, and I give them pencils so that they can do some scribbling and writing in their journals, because even young children should look at themselves as, authors, right? And of course, Mud Kitchen, and then we have water. We bring water in for the children to pour from Mud Kitchen because it's Los Angeles and we don't have any water, and that becomes part of our curriculum. Then we go on hikes sometimes we don't, just depends on the day. But toddlers could hike. I didn't think that toddlers could hike. They can hike, especially when we have our families there, And some of these toddlers are really young too. we were just talking, I do a parent education program now. The first couple of years I did 2-year-olds and a 2 to 5-year-old program. And I was the one sort of with the 2-year-olds, and now I do one where the toddlers can be anywhere from 12 months to 3 years old. And then I do a circle time. That's me during kind of the end of the pandemic. Okay, and so that's to give you an idea of what we do. And how many of you work in forest schools? I should have asked that in the very beginning. I know we talked a little bit. How many of you are interested in like nature schools? Or, I used to work in a little school in Sherman Oaks that was like, I was just saying, with a big billboard and concrete, and I did a nature program. So you could do nature programs wherever you are, but if you can get in the forest, even better, So there's always myths. So the first myth is, when it comes to planning, the children's ideas are the only source of emergent curriculum. That's what people think. Well, certainly their ideas are in the forefront, but there's other ideas that we bring in. That's just one of the sources. The other source are your ideas. Yoga. What else were your ideas that you're bringing in? Music. Anyone else have an idea that they want to bring in that they're passionate about? Yes. What's that? Fort building, right? You bring ideas from when you were a child and you bring that in and you teach them to work and build a fort. I love fort building. I'm not very good at it. So it's nice to have all different talents together, working together, right? And it models enthusiasm for children. So yeah, you can have ideas in emergent curriculum. Absolutely you can. There's different sources that we'll talk about it. And then toddlers don't have the capacity for inquiry or investigations. Of course they do. You know, the hardest part of my work is getting teachers to sit and be present with children and really listen to children. You know, a lot of times we come into a play-based space or even in the forest and the teachers stand around, they don't know what to do because they are told not to play with the children, true. But then at the same time, it's like, what is my role with these young children? And that's something that you do when you're part of emergent curriculum or inquiry-based planning. You figure out, you do a lot of listening and observing and you practice it. And believe me, you're running around because they're toddlers, right? You know, so they're doing something in my kitchen and the next thing they're running and getting somebody and pulling somebody's hair. I'm not just sitting there like this and looking around. I'm running around, you know. But you're paying attention to their actions. And you know, so that's, okay, just did that one. The next one is toddlers. So actually, they have excellent inquiry, just to end that. And that another one is this, a big one, is that there's no planning or organization when you're doing, or lesson plans when you're doing emergent curriculum. Absolutely there is. We're educators, you know, we're organized. We like to have things, you know, set up in our heads, so we come in and we plan and we implement it. Maybe it goes a different way, but how many of you like to organize your environment, even if you're in the forest? You know, it feels good. Yeah, you don't have to control everything, but we're definitely in control of our work, and we like to plan. And the wonderful Elizabeth Jones, does anybody know Elizabeth Jones? She just passed recently. She wrote Plays a Thing. She was my mentor. I was, you know, so lucky for the last 2 years of her life, and she was adamant that everyone understood that emergent curriculum is very organized, right? You know, because we need to respect the practices of the children and our practices as well. And then the last one is teachers can't complete required assessments when practicing emergent curriculum with toddlers. Of course you can, because you're right there with the children, and you're present and you're listening and you're taking notes. Maybe you're using your phone and you're recording stuff. That's the kind of research and data we need to fill out all those different kinds of things we have to fill out. You know, that's what we call working and growing and doing something in the natural environment, not come over here and sit down and can you make 3 circles and, you know, all that stuff. We got to work on that. We got a lot of work to do, but we'll do it together. We're all good. Okay, so what is emergent curriculum? Emergent curriculum is the practice of observing and listening to toddlers' inquiries, and then developing curriculum that builds on their investigations. So I'm going to observe the toddlers, I'm going to sit and listen to the toddlers, and then I'm going to build curriculum out of what I see, okay? Now, you know, when we talked about the interests of the children, dumping, pouring, throwing, climbing, those are all significant parts of toddler development of children. Ooh, was that me? That wasn't me, was that? Okay, it doesn't matter. I'm all good these days. Children, that's called schematic theory. Anybody have heard of schemas with children? I want everyone to know, I didn't hear about it till 2021. I used to just call it cause and effect. I didn't know. We got to share information like that. But what it means is that when toddlers are pouring and they're dumping and they're transferring and they're throwing, it's using a part of their brain that's real significant. It shows that they're learning. We don't want to discourage them. You know, remember when you put out stuff for toddlers and they'd get up and then they would, you know, pretty basket and they'd dump it. And, you put something else for them and, arrange it really lovely and then they dump it. No, that's part of their learning and growing and developing. So let's instead develop a curriculum that addresses that lets them dump and pour and, so when we were just talking about what you bring out for children in the forest, even in the forest, to answer my question when I came in, are they going to still do that kind of stuff? Yeah, they are. So the forest isn't going to change that. So let me put out some stuff that they can pour and they can dump and they can transfer, right? So I'm building on their thinking. They bring me their inquiries, or they bring you their inquiries, and then you're going to build on their thinking through your curriculum, right? Why not do pouring? Because that's something they're very interested in. So we call it a responsive curriculum. I'm responding to what I see. I'm putting out bowls, and my dramatic, I go back to my classroom, to my forest classroom first. When you do mud kitchen, does everybody here do mud kitchen? Gosh, you should see, I'm like all the mud kitchen groups around the United States, around the world, actually, they're hilarious, especially when they're inside. I love that, mud kitchen inside. People are really trying, I have to give them that, right? So when you're putting out your stuff for mud kitchen, you're going to make it inviting. You're going to make it so a child wants to play. Do you take the bowls and you throw them out, and walk away, or the bowl's all banged up and muddy? Or do you present it in a way that's inviting? We call that an invitation. When you came here today, they have everything laid out, the waters and the cups, and it's inviting. And the same for children. It helps them organize their thinking. It helps them, feel important, feel valued. So I just think about that when you're organizing or putting out your mud kitchen. You can make it attractive. You don't have to make it precious. That's the difference. With the Reggio Inspired, sometimes people get confused. And they put out their china and all this wonderful stuff, and then the children are like, I can't touch that. I mean, I've had kids do that. So no, let's make it so it's inviting for the children. So you bring out bowls, you bring out cups. We're just talking mud kitchen right now, right? And then you're creating an environment that's responsive. So now I'm going to build on it a little bit more. I'm going to say, okay, how can I build on it? So me and another teacher were like, let's go get some herbs and stuff in the forest, and let's go get a mortar and a pestle, and we'll sort them, and then the children will crush them and then smell them. And so we did that, and the children, 2-year-olds arrived, and they were playing with it, and they were crushing it with their fingers. We didn't know really what the end game was. We just wanted it to be like a sensory kind of thing. And then they started to make soup. So they said, I'm making miso soup. And then little Emily, she said, I'm making cake. And they had a disagreement, and then they had a resolution. And the teacher didn't say, this is just for grinding and smelling, She didn't put a limitation on it. She allowed them to kind of take their ideas and build on it. They weren't taking the mortar and the pestle and breaking it on a rock, or they weren't rolling it down the hill. They were creating soup, right? So she's thinking, okay, this is something that we can use in our curriculum. So if you think about it, we've got pouring and dumping, which are everyday kinds of things. And then we have herbs. So I have to think about, am I still connecting it to nature, How can I still stay connected to nature? So it's maybe they're into soup. For some reason, the toddlers that I work with, they're always into soup. I don't know why. Maybe it's the big pots, water. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to bring out some soup pots from home. I'm going to bring out a ladle. We have some, it's not mustard seed, some different plants. Sourgrass. See, I love when I have my people here. Yeah, it's all over the place. And so we can pick it and talk about, this is okay to pick, there's a lot of it, right? And then we can use that for soup. Good, I'll have you identify a few other things. Is that cool when we're talking? So we're building on this idea of soup. And what message does that send for kids, to toddlers especially? You value their ideas. So often people do curriculum that has nothing to do with them, just like that one that was for sale. They have a lot of really good ideas. Let's value them. It takes time, but let's value them. Okay, so this is me. I like to extend on that idea. So I thought, I was the mud kitchen person for a while. You know how you all have different spaces that, we have the owl, and that's the person that watches over everything, and then I'm in mud kitchen. So I thought, I'm going to make a recipe book and it's going to have their ideas. Why not? I'm big on emergent print and early literacy and children seeing themselves as authors. So I'll do a recipe book. There's my little Naomi again. And then, I said, what are you making? Clover soup. Okay. So what's in it? Oh, strawberries, clovers, water, put it in, eat it. So I take her words verbatim. I print them up with the picture. I put them in my PowerPoint and I laminate it. I'm a very big laminator. I know I need to get away from that. It's a lot of fun and it's, lasts a long time. And I actually brought some documentation and things here for people to look at, and I could share it other ways too. But I'm keeping this in for several months, almost the whole year, and I add to it. So once again, I'm taking this idea of soup and play and water, and it could change all the time. It always does for them, because one of the reasons they love Mud Kitchen so much is because it reminds them of their home. What's one thing we all do that's the same pretty much? Not the same in the sense of how we do it, but we eat, right? We got to eat, So children will bring those experiences in because it's sort of a common place for them to share their ideas. So, and it's not always food, everybody. I know Mud Kitchen is formulas and potions and magic, and especially as they get older, but that's one thing that we can bring in, and then you could even add to it as something that has to do with early literacy. Early literacy with children and toddlers does not mean ... name. You don't have to do that. You read to them, you put environmental print out there for them, you talk with them, you sing with them, like the commercials. I don't know if they're doing them in California. Do they do them in Oregon too? Talk, read, sing, it covers everything, or something like that. But it does, and they know that, and they have to put it out there as a public service. Okay, so that's how it happens, but you don't have to say, no early literacy happens in early childhood. Of course it does. Now I got to think about, how do I do it in nature, right? So emergent curriculum is understanding their inquiries just by observation, breaking away from the scripts, right? And then trusting that children have inquiries that are meaningful and relevant to them. We got to trust that children have really good ideas, because they do. This is what I do. I always say this in all my groups, my parenting groups with my teachers. When I was a kid, I'm 60, they get tired of hearing that, but that's okay, because I played. I went out in the dirt and I played and I made stuff, and nobody came and gave it a value. I just played, right? Maybe the older kids would say something, maybe the younger kids would say something, but my ideas were valued because I felt that they needed to be valued. You didn't have to have all that other stuff coming at you. And the beautiful thing about forest school is that allows for that. They can play with mud again, and nobody's going to say, that's not that. That's not that. They're allowed to use their ideas and break away, and we can trust them. And so there's a few challenges. Teachers and directors feel that there's learning happening in the program. Any directors here? Yeah, I understand. I was a director for a while. You take a parent for a tour, they want to know what the children are learning. You're trying to show it to them. Oh, look, we're doing dinosaurs. Yay, But is that really learning? No, that's what we're used to, that old idea and that old script, and we can break away from that. We got to do it for the children, okay? But there's ways that we can also do that. So, and creating a lesson plan seems easier. So I'm going to give you an experience that just happened to us. My director in the summertime, she takes a break, so she does a thematic curriculum of basic things like birds and, trying to think, reptiles, things with wings. She does it because she wants the teachers to relax in the summer and then not have to think so much. She's just trying to do it for the good of the staff. She's like, still do Mud Kitchen, still do library. And so I had a teacher the other day, and just like 2 weeks ago, it was a Wednesday, and I was setting up my toddlers, and she had her preschoolers, and they were all around this tree, and they're shaking it really violently, and it's raining leaves, and they're going, it's raining leaves. And she's thinking, this is okay, but I can see from my vantage point that there's nests in the trees. They're mourning dove nests. So I walk over there and I go, you know what, I don't want to interrupt everything, but I just want you guys to know there's mourning dove nests up in there, and if you're shaking it, you're going to disrupt their environment. Just go find another tree to shake. She was great, the kids were great, the kids were going, oh, look at there's this there, there's a spider web there, all great. And then the teacher, again, being respectful to the director, just says, you know what, this is the habitats, and we can talk about habitats next week. We're going to talk about it next week. And I thought, next week, this is the best time to talk about habitats. And she was respecting the teacher. She didn't even recognize she was doing it. And the director was respecting the teachers. The teacher, was respecting the director. See? So sometimes it becomes what you call an artificial anchor. Do we really need to be doing that? Habitats are part of our world in the forest anyways. I was in an urban school. They were part of the forest, our little urban, we had one tree in the forest. They were part of our curriculum there too, right? Okay, so we might want to think of ways of breaking away, and it's hard, but maybe we find each other and we support one another. So another reason to practice is because toddlers are beginning to develop their learning dispositions. In other words, a love for learning. We don't want to take that out of them. Toddler development is the fastest development in the humans, right? Besides adolescence, that goes kind of funny and fast and pruning. But there's a million neurons are building in a toddler's brain every second. That's not a minute, that's not an hour, every second. The most development that'll happen with children is from 0 to 3, 90%. And then the rest sort of happens slowly. Adolescent comes, it's pruning, So why wouldn't we have emergent curriculum with toddlers? It's the most important time of their development. And yet, when I went to go search for a book for emergent curriculum, there was nothing. And people still think about toddler education as, we don't need curriculum. We're not saying that it's scripted, and we're not saying that they have to do this, this, and that. But we're saying let's honor their ideas and treat them with respect, because the first 3 years are the most important. Did I already ask, how many of you work with toddlers? Oh, good. Yay, okay, good. Another reason why to practice is emergent curriculum builds on self-motivation and engagement. You're here because you want to learn, right? Yeah, I'm here because I wanted to do this and I want to keep learning. We have lost that in generations of children. We want them to feel motivated, self-motivated to learn. We want children to take initiative. They're losing that. Forest school could bring it back. Nature education can bring it back. I'm an optimist, but somebody has to be, right? It's also individualized. So a lot of you, I was just these great sound people, I move when I learn. I came in checking out another speaker, and they were speaking like this, and I was so envious, but I have to move, and children have to move too. And everybody learns. Some of you might not have to learn that way, but I do, right? So emergent curriculum allows for different types of learners to be honored. We always want to do that. Everybody has different learning styles. Everybody has different temperaments. Remember, forest school nature education is a sort of a marriage, a partnership between early childhood education, 50%, and forest pedagogy, 50%. You can't do one without another. You can't do a forest program with toddlers without knowing forest pedagogy, learning and growing, and early childhood. It all has to come together, So we can do that together. And then toddlers are experiencing, because of that brain growth, rapid emotions, and autonomy. You know what autonomy looks like for toddlers? A lot of people don't know this. I didn't really have the language for it till most recently, but, you say yes, they say no, You say come here, they say no, Put your shoes on, they say no. Because, their brains are saying, okay, we've got to get you ready to live in the world on your own. How will you live in the world on your own? But humans, we take a long time to develop, right? We can accept that with any other species. The bird is learning to be autonomous, yay. But with humans, for some reason, it's like we want them to behave. But autonomy is not about that. So you want to give children as many choices as you can. It doesn't mean they don't get in their car seat. It doesn't mean they run out of the boundary. It doesn't mean that they take their lunch and throw it up in the air. It doesn't mean that they bite the other person. Look about all the different kinds of boundaries they have on their lives anyways. So we want to give them some room and some autonomy so they can practice it. And is it tiring? Yeah, especially if you're the parent. But if you're the teacher, you can put that into your curriculum. Why wouldn't you put that into your curriculum, right? And then they're also learning how to regulate their emotions and their impulses and finding healthy ways to express themselves. Children are not born with any ability to self-regulate. That's not something that's built into them. And then when they're a baby, they just start to self-regulate. Do we have a little baby in here? Where's that little baby? Oh, they walked out. Okay. You know, they're not born with that. And in fact, that part of the brain won't turn on until they're 1 year old. And then when it does turn on, it's very new, right? It takes years for humans to develop that kind of regulation. So now we say co-regulation. So if someone's really upset, like a toddler, we're there and we're there to support them and help them co-regulate. But, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Slight tangent, but it relates.
No, good.
Kids are bicycle. Our hips are a little bit narrower, so our infants
Yes.
are born with underdeveloped brains, which is why we're such long time.
You know what, that is beautiful. I love that research. It's, you know what, that I just recently learned that. You said it in a beautiful, intelligent way. I'm gonna say it in a way that's not as intelligent, but you'll get the gist. I like the cartoon way, okay? Human beings, we have evolved. So babies really, fetuses, right, embryos, whatever, are supposed to be inside for a good, almost, I would say, what did they say? 10 months? I read somewhere 18 months, you know? And that's a long time. That's why their brains are sensitive, not because we don't have, you know, realistic expectations for them. Yeah, thank you for that. I always want to bring that up, but I never know if I should be bringing that up. They're not even supposed to be out of the womb yet. You know, that's why they're so sensitive. And that's why their time is so critical. They're supposed to be protected in the womb, you know? And that's such important research when people say, oh, wait a second, babies have always been super strong. No, 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 no. We just didn't have the research. Now we have the research. But again, I appreciate that so much. So if somebody says to you, well, you know what, they should be learning this. No, they shouldn't even be out of the womb yet, you know? They can't regulate their emotions. So we're there to help co-regulate. You got a lot of stuff going on in your brain. How is your emotional side going to be able to handle stuff? They don't want to cry for hours, or they don't want to, you know, get upset over something. They can't regulate it. You know, can you imagine how that must feel if you can't regulate something? You know, maybe go to something when you're really upset and you're crying and you can't stop. I'm a big crier, and when I cry, I can't stop. And people say, oh, Melissa, stop, stop. I can't, you know, because my emotions are taking over that part of my brain. And that's what toddlers are all about. So why not that be a part of curriculum, right? It's a really important part. And thank you, again, that's the latest research on 0 to 3. Another reason is that it provides children, or provides you to keep moving with the curriculum, let it further their ideas. This is a nature school too. I have one picture of a nature school. And then curriculum always is flexible and it's moving, just like when I was making the soup with the little toddlers, right? You know, they made soup, but then it shifted and it changed. You know, it's constantly moving. So there's a story, you know, Magda Gerber, who does a lot of infant toddler stuff. She said, be careful what you teach, because it might interfere with what they are learning, and we do that all the time. Does anybody have a question while I take a really quick sip of water? Okay. You know, I'm a social constructivist. What it means is, usually when I give workshops, I'm always doing hands-on stuff. So thank you for listening. This is, okay. So these are the sources of emergent curriculum. And I know I don't have that much time left, okay. Children, all those ideas that we're talking about. And I'm going to show you some stories. Teachers, the yoga, the cooking, weaving. None of you said any of that today, but that's good. Bring your love to children. Make sure it's just appropriate, age appropriate. Developmental stuff, all that schematic play. And I did bring something over there if you want to snap a shot of what schema play is. Again, I'm sharing this because I wish people would share more, you know. I wish I would have known this when I was writing. And then the serendipitous moments, and the social emotional environment is a big part of curriculum. You know, once again, so if you're thinking, well, how do I plan all this? Well, you have the children, you know, you have the adults, the sources that you want to bring in, the developmental kinds of tasks, the social emotional, what are they working on? And those surprise moments that come from nature. And then this is something that can last a couple months. No weak curriculum. You know, you don't need to do that. That's just, again, that's one of the myths that we're trying to take out. Okay, so these are some stories that I actually documented, and then I put them out for the parents in a blog. You could do the same. You know, start light if you want. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. As you know, when you write, sometimes I got the best advice is like, when you put something down on paper, write it down like nobody's going to read it, right? And then you let go of that block, that writer's block. So puddles, you know, it never rains in Southern California, like the song, but it did for 2 years. And that we had puddles, and the toddlers were gravitating with their parents to the puddles. And that's a big deal for these kids. And so this was part of nature, but I said, let's go check out the puddles. And they were walking in the puddles, and they were touching the water a little bit, and they were holding their kids in the puddles. And they were exploring the puddles. Now, that's a big part of a toddler's development. I even have older kids that it's part of their development. And what a wonderful scientific thing for it to be, right? That's better than any sensory table. And I'm a big sensory table person. Then what happens? What ends up happening when there's a lot of heat and sun? They dry out. So they start drying out. So we go to the puddles, and they're bringing their parents to the puddles, and there's no more water. And they're touching the dirt, it's still a little bit moist, and they're riding in the dirt. And then 10 days later, it's a lot of hot sun, and the puddles are completely gone, and it's dry. So what are they learning as toddlers in forest school due to the puddles that they were interested in? What's that? They disappear because there's no rain. Yeah, right, I know, right? It sounds so simplistic, because the sun dries out the puddles because the water evaporates. And these are 2-year-olds talking about this. Children in a lot of places, but I'm going to tell you in Los Angeles, not Northern California, there's no lakes anywhere. They have no idea where water comes from. They think it comes from the store, and that's what they told me. And pipes. I said, where does water come from? The store. You know, how can they conserve water if they don't even know where it comes from, if they don't even see the source? I grew up, the lake's low, we got to save water. You know, we got to save water because this river is low. I grew up that way, but if they don't have any kind of vantage point, how do they know that? And so somehow forest education can teach them that, but other ways can too. So that's evaporation, that's puddles. Mud is, you think mud, oh, yeah, Melissa, mud. I never got kids in the mud until 2019. I thought sand was cool. I didn't know mud was good. Mud is better than sand. I like sand, but mud is more complex than sand. And mud holds the water, and mud changes the shape. And when you go from mud just temporarily to sand, like our school did for a little bit because we had to change sites, the sand, you pour water in, it just absorbs all the water, you know, it doesn't make it a cool substance. So mud is important. I didn't even know mud was good for us until I read it in some book, you know. Till 2019. You see what I'm saying? We can do this early. You know, mud is very good for children. It's very good for us, our mental health. And then I took children, the children were exploring the mud, and we had a really earthy, lovely mud at one of our sites. And then we took a little hike, and they plopped down, and there was mud, and they were playing in the dirt, and this little girl named Goldie goes, beach mud. And I go, beach mud? And we're touching it, and it was sandy mud. So it had more sand content and rock content than the other earthy mud. So there's another scientific thing that you're bringing in just through mud. You don't have to have anybody tell you that. You could research it. I researched that. I got on my phone. Of course, I have to research because I never learned this when I was younger, but the children are learning it now. And toddlers have the capacity to learn about mud. Another one is boundaries. So we don't have fences in the forest. And that was a big question. How are we going to keep the children in without a fence, especially the toddlers? They have no self-regulation. And so my director, she put up a rope, and she's like, this is the door, she calls it. And sometimes adults have to go to the door and hang at the door because they're going to run out because they're impulsive and they don't have that kind of self-regulatory stuff. And then we have them come back in, and they run back out, and we have them come back, and eventually they internalize it, and we do boundary walks and things like that. But these two little guys, they kept running to the rope, and they'd go, like this, on the other side, and come back, Otis, little smile. Because children are testing theories. They're like the greatest scientists. They truly are, they have a hypothesis, they test it out. That's really how their brain works. And if you look at it like that, it's kind of helpful. But it was very frustrating to us and the teachers because we didn't know if we can keep them safe. So we tried all sorts of things, and I finally said, you know what, let's try to do like a letter, because I do a lot of, again, printing with toddlers. So I wrote a letter, and I said, stay in base camp. I can't see it from there. Is that what it says, stay in base camp? And then I had them sign it, because they're just two, you know. So one did a little scribble, come here and sign it, and the other guy did a little sign. And I looked at the signature, you know, I didn't expect them to write their name. I just wanted them to be a part of the process. So one little guy wrote an O for Otis, and the other guy did a little scribble. You know, that was their knowledge of print. Both are really wonderful ways of learning about print. And you know, it's so funny, they didn't go over that again. You know, and they kept telling people, don't go over the rope, stay in base camp. And then I heard from the dad of one little guy everywhere he went. He was looking at the stop signs and he, you know, don't go now, Dad, stop. You know, see how it opens it up? Why do we think that they're not capable, you know? So you could do these, this becomes part of curriculum. You know, and then sticks. Anyone play with sticks with their toddlers? Yeah, you know, before 2019, I was told sticks were dangerous, you know. I played with them as a kid, I loved them, but I was told they were dangerous, they could poke out somebody's eye and don't have sticks. So we have the boundaries, and we have this idea of low and slow, and you know, if you have a big stick, like little Irene did in the middle, you have to have a big space, and you run like this. But make sure there's nobody around. Kids need to do that because it makes them feel powerful. That's why they play superhero play. They play it not because they're all wrapped up in media. Maybe they are. Let them get it out in the forest. They want big things. Plus, it's all that great big body work, right? You know. And then maybe if they're using smaller sticks like they were, I said, you can use those sticks. Just go. You can go kind of like this, but put them high so they don't poke anybody. And the children were doing that. So sticks become part of curriculum, and I could write about that in the blog too. And then they play counting with sticks. This is all the stuff the parents love. And we had a little toddler, you know, she's about almost 3, but she was building a railroad track with sticks. The little guy to the, I think it's your right, your left, doing chopsticks, because that's what he does at home with the sticks. So sticks take on a whole different meaning. And we have to validate that for adults. Remember, a stick can be whatever you want it to be. You can transform it. You want children to pull away from the media, give them a stick, because it makes them feel powerful. But then teach them how to use a stick for sure. And then, so now that's all, those are children's ideas, as simple as they might be, and they can get more complex than that. So now I have, what about teachers' idea? I do music with children, I bring that in. But also, I wanted to bring art experiences in. Maybe they're part of your curriculum, maybe they're not. But I never thought of myself as an artist as a child. So I thought, you know, I would like them to work with some basic natural materials. I'd like them to use maybe like a non-toxic watercolor, not tempera or anything, you know, just to try that out and use different brushes and things, and which I do. And then I thought I'd bring in clay because I was still new with clay, but I wanted them to use that because we need to give children more open-ended ways to express themselves. Now that's kind of my limited knowledge, but I wanted to bring that in. Do any of you do any kind of art exploration or open-ended art? Or, yeah, not everybody can do that. You don't have to do, you know, cutouts and, now of course you don't do that, but let art be a form of self-expression. Children need that. Music is a form of art of expression. You could create beautiful, you know, installations with sticks. You could do the Andy Goldsworthy stuff. There's so much you can do. Don't limit them. And then pretty soon I thought, okay, Melissa, get it back to nature. So we had this beautiful dry eucalyptus bark that was shedding. So I took that and I put that out for them to kind of connect with that. And then I can have some dialogue about eucalyptus. They can paint eucalyptus bark. Then I even went to another educator. I said, can you help me make natural paint? How do we use a natural environment to make paint? And my friend Kendall gave me a really great recipe. She did it with them because I was so intimidated. You know? And we worked together, and then we made natural paint outside in nature. So I don't always want to get stuck. I'm not bringing an indoor preschool outside. Maybe some of the things aren't changing, such as the pouring and the dumping. I'm going to bring that out for them. And I'm going to bring the mud kitchen out. But how can I continually get them connected to nature? And I bet you have a lot of really good ideas, everybody. Okay, go back. Construction play. Becca and I were talking about, like, her idea was if you bring, construction can happen with anything in the forest, but here's the thing, in toddlers, you did the forts. Who did the forts? Forts, right? We needed something sort of that was smaller scale to begin with, so they could do the forts, right? What is your name? So they can go to Melly and get support later for forts, see what I mean? So they start, so I thought, okay, maybe I'll bring in some tree blocks, just to start with some loose parts, just to get them to think about construction. Now, you might have even a better idea and share it with me, definitely. But for toddlers, that's what I started with. I didn't put out unit blocks, but I went out and I had these, everybody. I didn't go buy them, they're very expensive, tree blocks. But you can make tree blocks, right? Anybody good with that? Another thing is, look at, I got 15 minutes. Separation anxiety. Separation anxiety is something children go through. It's very painful. It's a developmental task that they have to go through. Some children might not feel so deeply about it. Some children might. It's rarely talked about. It only got talked about even with my greatest colleagues in the pandemic. Children go through pain. And if you're working with toddlers, you see them in that pain. They don't know that the parents are coming back. How are they going to know that it's an abstraction, right? So what you can do is you kind of connect them with the idea that they're still connected to family. We use family books. We have, I used to use like a clipboard, but now we use journals. And so I'll ask them questions like, when they're really, really upset, this is Naomi again, I'm really upset, you know. You want to go home? I want to go home. I'll write her words down, you know. Mama, mama, okay, what else? Blue van, okay. You know, this is her crying, she's very upset. I'm validating her feelings with print. You know, so often we don't do that with young children. You can't say to young children, they're going to come back, don't worry about it. You don't want to distract them from feelings. We're doing that way too much these days. We want them to stay connected to their feelings and help them work through them, right? What better way to do that you could do letter writing with them. Letter writing meaning I'm doing dictation with them. And pretty soon Naomi was, after about 2 weeks later, she had a pencil and she's scribbling on it, you know, I'm going to write to mommy. She doesn't say it like that, you know, mommy, pencil, and then she, you know, writes. And then she tucked the journal everywhere with her because she learned that the journal was a place for her to put her feelings down or to communicate. Once again, let's start with young children in terms of letting them see themselves as authors, not when they get into first or second grade and give them a report. You know, I got this was last year with a teacher named Addie and this little girl named Astra. She was really upset and she has her family book and I got some pictures of it. But she's really upset. She's missing her mom. She's there for a full day. We do a full day forest program. And I said, Addie, stay with her as best as you can. And I'll be here, I'm an extra person, I'll help with everything else. So she held her and she looked at the family book. It's not like little Astra was laughing and I'm done. No, she was in pain. And then Addie got another book and, you know, you want to read another book too? Yeah. She read a book, still in pain, you know. And then pretty soon they went on a little walk just adjacent to our base camp. You like all the graffiti? This is Los Angeles, everybody. We bring chalk out, they bring spray paint out. But we ended up, look at Addie is sitting and what's little Astra doing? Moving away and playing because she's developing trust. You know, we drop children off at schools and we say, you know, bye with strangers and we expect them to feel safe, but that's not how it works. We would never do that to an adult. There's always transitions into that, you know. And then a couple days later, maybe a week later, I get a picture of Astra and she's playing and she's comfortable and she's feeling safe and that's what we want. So give them that time, especially when they're 2, to transition into it. They're not going to come into preschool, not this mentality of rip the Band-Aid off. I don't know where that works. Maybe it works for some things. You know, it doesn't work for emotions in children. Okay, all right. They have to build a relationship. We would expect that with you, right? Why not expect that with children? So, okay. We had rain 2 years in Los Angeles. That was such a great thing, right? And we had a creek. I couldn't believe it. That's like a dream. Creeks are like the biggest sensory kind of thing for a toddler. I go into lab schools, they have, human-made creeks, because they're so sensory rich. The toddlers were playing in it, like the ones that were so deregulated, and they get in that water, and it's like, it's amazing what water does. But how do we introduce water to children? And they do this in Los Angeles. Pools, big pools, come on in, you're 1 year old, I'm gonna put you in the deep end. That's really what they do. But nobody learns that way. Even my pets don't learn that way. They don't want to jump in a pool. They want to go in a creek. It's gradual. What a wonderful way to introduce water. So we got lucky. So this is something that happened within the environment, right? So this becomes a source for my curriculum. So we have mud kitchen, maybe they're doing some soup. Now mud kitchen's about the creek. And look, they could pour and dump and transfer and throw rocks in as much as they want. It was fantastic. And on top of that, the ones that are really intense are regulated. Imagine that. So like my director Becca had stated once in this video that was shot, it's like, water tables are great, they're excellent, but what do creeks do? Even more so. Water is good for children, and they're safe, we're right there. We're not hanging out on the peripheral having a cup of coffee, we're right there with them, right? So they walk in it, they play in it, they pour in it. They use ladles, I love ladles. So what's something that you could bring into the creek? What would you bring in if you had a big area with water? Yeah, watering cans, yeah. Yogurt containers. You go to a thrift store, the sky's the limit, colanders, right? What I was observing, and this is where observation counts, is they were taking my baskets to the creek, and they were putting my baskets in, and they were folding them up, and then all the water's coming down like rain. And I didn't want them to ruin my baskets. You understand that? They cost money and everything, and I really like my baskets. So I said, instead of saying, baskets, nothing, we're not gonna use anything like that in the creek, I'm gonna build on that. Okay, so they can't use my baskets because they'll break, they'll dissolve and break. But I'll go to the thrift store and I'll get a steamer pot, and I'll get all little things with holes, colanders, so they can get that idea of pouring and transferring and dripping. And I bring that into the environment, and I share that with the families. This is what we do because this is what the children are looking for right now. So this would be something that happened in the natural environment. And this is a toddler that's very expressive. So let's practice our observing chops. What's this toddler doing right now? Yeah. And what kind of scientific exploration do you think is happening right now? What's that?
Sink or float.
Yes, yeah, it could be sink or float, yeah. Water movement, yeah. He was checking out if the small leaf, how fast the small leaf went down, and then how fast the bigger leaf went down. But there could have been other ideas too, because I can't read his mind, right? But what a fantastic kind of thing, when you're talking about the sink and float. I used to do the big bucket of the big fish bowl, and every small group, does this sink or float? Anybody do that? Does this sink or float? It's nice, but we can do it in different ways, right? With nature. Doesn't have to be so contrived all the time, So yeah, so your photography becomes your documentation. So, I'm much better taking pictures with the parents not there for some reason. I don't know why, because I'm talking and I feel intrusive. But I take ask anybody, I have like 1,100 pictures on my phone because I'm trying to capture the idea of what's happening, and that's my memory. Or you could take notes. I have every little journal in my school has little scribbled notes on it. I use my phone. In fact, I'm going to a camera. I think I'm getting rid of the phone. I'm going to back to the camera, because the phone has too many applications. It takes me too long. But there's other ways that you document. Are there any other ways you document?
Nature journal.
Okay, yeah.
The older ones, they more like stuff visual what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
The little ones scribble.
Yeah.
Bring like some tape.
Yeah.
They can bring things in tape about what we're talking and what we're investigating.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the year, they keep the journals back home.
Hmm.
And I always put like a little note of what they were working or something they said.
Wow.
So that's my documentation of exploration.
Yeah. It's kind of like the idea of floor books. Yeah, it's a wonderful way to do it. Anyone ever hear of Claire Waldron. Gosh, if you can get Claire's stuff, she was way ahead of her time. You know, I mean, she was doing toddler stuff years ago. I mean, I've had her books forever, and I didn't even know what they were about. She's fantastic. So you take all this documentation, and then how are you learning? People say they're not talking. Well, they've got physical actions, right? They pick something up, they pour it out, they're dumping, and you can tell what children are doing by the physicality of what they're doing. And gesture is really important. You know, that all comes from this really sort of intentional observation, you know. Gesture has been replaced in toddler circles with parents by sign language. Anybody know about that, you know? I understand the purpose of it, but we have to be careful with that because human beings naturally and other species have gesture. Even my dog has gesture. I'm leaving the house, you know, it's time to eat, you know, we laugh. It is sort of funny, but that's gesture and that's communication. And that's a natural way for human beings to communicate. You know? So we want to pay attention to gesture as a language of young children. That's absolutely okay to do. You know, we don't have to teach them something completely new unless you want to, unless it's necessary, unless they don't have a lot of expressive language. But you want to look for their body language. I've got 2 minutes left. And then you observe and you document and you slow down. You become you're amongst the children. You can sit with them, you can stand with them, but you're amongst the children. Again, the biggest, hardest thing for me to teach teachers is how to be with young children and not interrupt their play and not be so disconnected from their play. All right, so that's kind of an ongoing dialogue. Meet toddlers where they are. You don't have to play with them. You can begin ideas with toddlers, but you don't have to play, let's play chase. Or you don't have to do that with children. They might invite you in, but did anybody do that, you know, with a lot of you? Probably not. We don't need that idea. We want them to build that own initiative. And then you could have one person as an observer, one person, you know, the observer still runs around, you know. And then we have someone called an owl that watches. Direct teaching isn't how people learn. I'm speaking to you, I have 1 minute, I know. You're gonna leave here and you're gonna remember like 20%, maybe 10. Because engagement, social engagement, constructivism is how we learn. So we can find ways to kind of circle back and talk, you know. It's children too. Direct teaching is not necessary with them. Maybe certain rules, boundaries, but that's not really how they learn. So you reflect and then you interpret and you observe. You know, what can you build that they're interested in? What are things that you can bring in to sort of support their needs? You can write this down on a curriculum. Now I'm going really fast. And you could use I can send this to people, I can send it to the organization and we can send it out. This is one way. This is Susan Stacy is a wonderful emergent curriculum educator. You can write down your ideas and maybe what's going to come out of it. Again, it doesn't have to be every week, everybody. It could be once a month. This is what it looks for me. You know, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do some ideas are going to be water play, being in the shade. It's super hot where I'm working right now. So we're going to explore shade areas. We're going to do shade hikes. Live oaks are a big deal, right? And then mud kitchen, I'm going to continue bringing stuff in, maybe some greens and things and herbs. My art focus is still watercolors. I'm going to bring different tools, literacy. I'm going to still be doing journals. And that's stuff you could have going on for a couple of months, and that's absolutely good and healthy, and that's what children should be doing. You know, they are in-depth thinkers. We want to give them some time, even though people say they have such short attention spans. You know, and then you can make things visible. And I have a bunch of things over here that I've created. I tried to bring as much as I could. I create books. I do documentation through blog. I'll print them up and I'll put them out for the parents to read, for the children to revisit their learning, their experiences. Your job is to interpret their learning. And if you feel like, well, I don't know what I'm going to say, neither do I half the time, and I'm an author. I didn't write my book out of all up here. I wrote a book because I was reading other people's stuff and I liked it, and then I would bring my experiences in and then I would write. You can absolutely keep doing that, okay? Go to those great resources. You could do PowerPoint documentations, you could do binders with documentation. Social media is a big one, especially if you interpret the language, right? And this is something I put out really quick. I think I'm not 2 minutes over. This is physics, simple physics, force, momentum, motion, and momentum. Who says that toddlers aren't scientists? So I print this out, I use the language. This wasn't on the top of my head, everybody. I researched it because science was never my expertise. I learned more in preschool than I learned, in all my college years. But then you put this out for the parents, and what does it do to the play? It validates it. We got to validate the play, and that's okay, whatever it's going to take to get children into nature, into play, right? So I went 2 minutes over, not bad, everybody, right? I did it, yay! Thank you so much for coming. You're welcome to email. We can keep talking emergent curriculum. We're going to keep talking, and we'll keep building really great places for children in the forest, especially toddlers in the forest. Sound good? Okay, thank you, everybody.